Welcome to the Unitarian Church of Lincoln on this Sunday morning. My name is the Reverend Oscar Sinclair. At the beginning of our services, each time we gather, we light a flaming chalice. It has been a symbol of Unitarian Universalism for generations now, and for the last 30 or so years, we have lit it as a way to mark the beginning of our time together. We light it today with words from the poet Adrian Rich that also began a meeting that happened earlier this week. Adrian Rich writes in our hymnal that my heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much has been destroyed. I must cast my lot with those who, age after age, with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. I am pretty certain at least some of those people reconstituting the world are here. At least that's where I've cast my lot, either here in person or here on the live stream that we are running this morning. We are now in month going on 20 of the coronavirus pandemic, and all throughout we've gathered every Sunday. Sometimes in person, sometimes online, sometimes in multi-platform ways. Chances are, before this is all over, we'll figure out at least one brand new way of doing worship together. But we have gathered because the function of the church has remained the same: to be a community, to practice being human together, and to say, despite all evidence to the contrary sometimes, that a better world is possible. Sunday morning, whether in person or on YouTube, is a chance to proclaim that, to say who we are, what we're about, to invite folks in, to open the doors of this congregation in every way that we can. We have a big vision here. We say that the Unitarian Church of Lincoln aspires to be a loving community, uniting reason with spiritual exploration to transform ourselves and transform the world. And that will be true. That remains true whether in person, online, or in that aforementioned way of being that we haven't figured out yet. In what has become my nearly weekly update on COVID, let me talk through just a couple things. We talked about this at length last week, so if you want to spend 20 minutes listening to me talk about what we owe each other in a time of pandemic, that is on YouTube. But for now, cases in Lancaster County are going up. This last week, the county recorded the single highest one-day total of new cases in the year 2021. So, this is not over. We're still in the midst of a global pandemic. You can see in this room that there are chairs still spread out. There are more people on the live stream than there are in person here. But we are going to make every attempt to continue meeting in person for those that feel comfortable doing so. So what that means is that we are going to ask that you wear masks while you're in this building, unless you're speaking from this side. And that if you participate in in-person activities at the Unitarian Church of Lincoln, you get vaccinated. It is really, 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 really important that you do that second thing. The other big update was that this week, the Lincoln-Lancaster County Department of Health announced that booster shots are going to become available for everybody who is an adult. So if you have not yet gotten your booster shot, please do so. You can do that by going to any pharmacy in town, or you can go directly through the health department. If we hear about specific clinics, we will push those out to the congregation. We talked last week about pandemics being a collective action problem. And our faith that is so grounded in caring for a community is set up to respond to a collective action problem. We've done really, really well the last 20 months. And we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep doing it even if this is a long winter. Okay, Thus ends the COVID update for November 21st. I do also want to take a moment as we begin by introducing our guest speaker this morning, who has quickly become a good friend and a trusted colleague in the work. Ben McConnell is on the staff of the DART network and was invited to work here in Lincoln by the United Methodist Bishop and the Great Plains United Methodist Conference as part of their conference-wide Doing Justice initiative. Ben has established new justice ministry organizations in Kansas City, in Johnson County, in Lawrence, and in Topeka, Kansas. And over the last couple months, he's been helping to organize and form what is becoming a nascent congregational-based community organizing network here in Lincoln. He can talk at length about the work that they've done in Lawrence to shift from managing to eliminating homelessness, and how they brought congregations together in one of the most diverse cities in the region. It is a pleasure to be working with you, Ben, on that project. It is a true pleasure to have you here with us this morning. All right. Our opening hymn is number 1028, The Fire of Commitment. It is in the teal hymnal. It will also be projected above me. I am going to attempt to cue you at the beginning. So if you will, please rise in body or in spirit. We're going to take 2 seconds for me to get the hymnal out, and then Bill will start playing, and I will cue the start. For anybody visiting, it might be obvious that this congregation did not call a talented singer.
Our story today is called Sometimes People March by Tessa Allen. Sometimes ants march. Sometimes bands march. Sometimes people march. Marching is something people do together when they want to resist injustice or when they notice the need for change. People march for many reasons. People march for things they care about and people they love. People march for the health of their bodies and their communities and the world. People march for the freedom to love and live and learn. Sometimes people carry signs to share their stories of resistance. Stop the war, votes for women, access as a civil right, Black Lives Matter. We will love and protect each other. Act up and fight back. Refugees are welcome here. Picket ladies, tailors, strikers. We are the 99%. March for our future. March for our lives. People resist in many ways. Sometimes people resist with their voices. Show me what democracy looks like. This is what democracy looks like. People resist with meetings. They resist by standing up or sitting down or taking a knee. It isn't always easy. Feet get tired, arms get tired, hearts and hopes get tired. Sometimes problems seem too big or too complex, but we do not march alone. Ants are stronger together. Bands are louder together, and people are more powerful together. Sometimes from feelings or fear or anger or injustice comes the hope for change. Sometimes great change starts small, with a brave question. Maybe your question, a question that calls people together. And together, we find the courage to march. That is the end of our story.
Our next hymn has words taken from the preamble of the Constitution of the United Mine Workers of America, set to an old Irish folk song. So, let's try playing it through once.
The harmonization of which is a little strange. So I will play it clear through once before we sing.
So we're going to play it through once on the piano, and then we will all sing it with the words up there. Each week, as part of our service, we take up a collection to support the programs of this church and our partners in the world. We do this because we know that we each give to this place and we each grow from this place in our own way. We show that support in tangible ways by taking up a collection on Sunday morning. During COVID, we have been doing that by, still can't believe I'm saying this, asking people to take out their cell phones in the middle of service and texting UC Lincoln and the amount you wish to give to 73256. That's likely also above my head right now. It does occur to me that in the last 6 months, we have learned a little bit more about surface transmission of COVID. And so as I'm saying this, I'm realizing that we were probably going to bring plates back before too long. But this will remain an option indefinitely. So as Bill plays the next piece, if you wish to give, you can text UC Lincoln and the amount you wish to give to 73256. Part of our coming together each week is an opportunity to share the joys and sorrows of our lives. We do this because sorrow is easier to bear in community, and joy is easier to celebrate. In a moment, I'll ask you to share your name or the name of somebody you are carrying in sorrow into this shared space. As we share in this space, I'll repeat the names into the microphone for the folks on the live stream, and I will share the names that they're sharing into the microphone for folks here. Who are we carrying in sorrow today?
Yesterday was Transgender Day of Remembrance. We held a candlelight vigil read off the names of more than 50 people who were killed for being trans in the past year.
Yesterday was Trans Day of Remembrance. Jack and Marcia. Sarah and Thomas. Rebecca. Teresa. In the chat, there are mentions of Andre, Mary's nephew who died at the age of 49 this week, Slide Hampton, care for Dana, sorrow for kids facing bullying, deep sadness for those who have COVID. We also know that sorrow is not the end of the story. Who are we carrying in joy this morning? Ray and Marcia are going to be first-time grandparents. Mazel tov. Rebecca turned 63 yesterday. I hear November 20th is the best birthday. Other joys. Casey and Ryan.
My son Micah's birthday is on the 24th.
Micah's birthday is on the 24th. The joy of the kids area, yes. Yep. Humanity is here for another Thanksgiving. From Chelsea Krafka, baby Abe, my nephew, who got to come home from the NICU yesterday. And in the chat, happiness for Oscar's birthday yesterday. Oh, no. No, we're going to go into something serious right now. All right. Thank you, everybody. Celeste, who is running an Ironman in Phoenix in the present moment, is also here. I do, in what is an unfortunate gear change, actually. I do want to take a moment before we play this next hymn. Every time there's a big event in the life of our country or in the news, we puzzle through how to address it in worship. Does it become a sermon? Does it become a prayer? Does it become something that we say before the sermon starts? And the decision in Kenosha to acquit Kyle Rittenhouse of all charges, it was one of those moments. We really say, what do we say about this? And I'll be honest, I don't know. You have all heard me preach on this. You've heard me preach on the problems of race in America. You've heard me preach on the problems of white supremacy in America. You have heard me preach on the problem of guns in America. I have nothing new to say about any of those things. What I keep going back to in weeks like this is Reinhold Niebuhr, who wrote a book called The Irony of American History. He said, "Nothing worth doing is completed in our lifetime, therefore we must be saved by hope. Nothing true or beautiful or good makes complete sense in any immediate context of history, therefore we must be saved by faith. And nothing we do, however virtuous, can be accomplished alone, therefore we must be saved by love." He goes on to say that no virtuous act is quite as virtuous from the standpoint of our friend or foe as from our own. Therefore, we are saved by the final form of love, which is forgiveness. So 2 things. As we talked about a month ago, forgiveness is never an expectation. I'm not going to get up here after that acquittal and pretend that forgiveness is an easy thing or a thing that even should happen. I'll say that I know that the legal system is not the same as the justice system. But the other thing that I'll say, the reason that I keep going back to Niebuhr is that he points out that this stuff takes a long time. That none of this is solved in a single lifetime or a single sermon. And that is why we are saved by faith, hope, and love. All right. That gear change aside, I will now send it over to our music director, Bob Fusen.
Good morning. I asked Oscar if I could introduce this next hymn because we were going to surprise him with Happy Birthday. And I stood up and Bill saw me and he kind of read my mind. Bill is a lot like Jesus in that he saved me a lot and he's a carpenter. So if you'll please rise in body and spirit to sing number 123, Spirit of Life.
Our reading this morning is from a letter from Birmingham Jail by the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. It is 4 words long. The reading is, "My dear fellow clergymen." Ben?
Morning.
This is my first sermon. As I understand it, having spent a lot of time in churches, the assignment is to share some wisdom with the congregation that might assist us as we go through life. My sermon is culturally un-American, I would like to suggest. When I was growing up, to help me understand American individualism, we talked about the Marlboro Man, right? But I think the Army's "be all you can be" is kind of supplanted that for me. And most sermons are sort of the "be all you can be" sermons, where it's meant to give you some kind of individual wisdom to help you navigate your personal life. That's Americanism, that concept of rugged individualism, worshiping together only to suggest ideas for our individual life, personal salvation perhaps. But I'm an organizer by trade, and so I am imagining collective actions. So my wisdom today that I'm sharing to you comes from the point of view of a community organizer that doesn't necessarily have good advice on how to be a better individual, but how to improve our society through collective action. And I'm not Jesus by a long shot, so I don't speak in parables, I just speak directly. These are the 3 lessons of my sermon today. Number 1, we cannot think ourselves to justice. I was raised Unitarian. I know you're intelligent people by nature. So I just want to let you know, we're not going to be able to think ourselves to a just society. My second lesson is good people who wish to seek a better society must organize. And number 3, when you organize, you are met with resistance. Again, we cannot think ourselves to justice. Good people must organize in order to bring about a greater degree of justice. And don't be fooled. Once you enter those, God's going to trouble the waters, and we will be met with resistance. So, who am I? Johnny Cash has a song that I like to think about in terms of my career. I've been everywhere, man. I have been spending 25 years organizing people around collective action. I've worked on mental health, endangered species, world hunger, climate change. Climate change when it used to be the Kyoto Agreement, not the Paris Agreement. Reading curriculum in public schools, policing reform, affordable housing, criminal justice reform, eliminating homelessness, clean air, clean water, Superfund site legislation, basically the gamut of things from cleaning up vacant lots to ending climate change on a global level and everything in between. I've worked on those campaigns. I've worked in Italy, the Czech Republic, Germany, Connecticut, Kansas, Nebraska, Minnesota, England, Kentucky. I've used civil disobedience, arrested in 3 countries, I'm proud to say on my resume. I've used citizen lobby. I've done press blitzes. I've used direct action. I've used protest actions, call-ins, ballot measures, built new organizations. So yeah, I've been everywhere, man, when it comes to the idea of collective action. And I keep returning back to these same lessons. When I was growing up, my brother Ian came home with a record from the band called the Dead Kennedys. Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables was the name of the album. And my religion between probably middle school and high school was a steady diet of punk rock music, which makes me totally incapable of singing these hymns on cue. But inside that almost American religion of punk rock, was this incredible understanding about criticizing powers. I mean, that was the essence of punk rock. I didn't quite capture it until I brought home a 7-inch record from a band called Bad Religion, and on the flip side was Noam Chomsky. And I listened to this guy. He's an anarchist named Noam Chomsky. Some of you might know him. He's an intellectual from MIT. He's basically rewrote the linguistics 3 times, revolutionized it in his profession. But he's also been a very outspoken political activist. And I started to really consume everything that man wrote. And I was putting myself through college as a housekeeper at a hospital, and I would be doing in break rooms, reading Manufacturing Consent by Noam Chomsky, and then working in for my criminal justice degree. And I actually, through that, had this false imagination that if smart people could just be exposed to the right paths, then we could create a better society. And I had that thought until a lobby visit with a Pennsylvania senator. Some of you may know, Arlen Specter was his name. And my assignment as an organizer, fresh out of college, 3 years experience, was to take what they called unusual spokespersons into this lobby visit. Arlen Specter was Jewish. I brought his rabbi. I brought a bird watcher from the Audubon Society. I brought a biologist from the University of Pennsylvania. I brought a medical doctor who had this speech about the idea that most of our medicines come from the natural world, and the loss of endangered species, which was what we were lobbying for, would prevent us from identifying new medicines for healing cancer and so on. And we went around, and in this lobby visit with Senator Specter, we gave a small little message about why he ought to reauthorize this monumental bill in the environmental movement known as the Endangered Species Act. And I was proud as punch about myself, you know. And Arlen Specter said, I really appreciate everybody's perspectives. You've given me a lot to think about. I'll let you know how I feel about this when the bill comes up for consideration. The rabbi took me to lunch and in Philadelphia, and he said to me, you know, young man, you are incredibly stupid. I said, could you please elaborate on that? And he said, I know Arlen Specter. And I know that the Shopping Malls of America lobby is a major donor to his campaign. And I know that your endangered species prevent them from developing the suburban sprawl that's happening all over the United States. This was in 1997. And I know that you seem to think that if you just give him 5 good arguments, that he will find it in its heart to reauthorize the Endangered Species Act. And I know that is an incredibly stupid thing to imagine, that that's the way the world works. He goes, in the public arena, decisions are made based on power. And my friend, you have none. And that disabused me of the notion that we cannot think ourselves to justice, and brought me into my second lesson as wisdom I would share from the perspective of a community organizer. Good people must organize in large numbers to address the injustices of our community. And so I left that meeting pretty angry at being personally offended. But I'll tell you, campaign after campaign after campaign, especially when it comes to environmental issues, where the opposite side is organized money so carefully manipulative, I started to realize he was absolutely right. And then I was in Louisville, Kentucky, hungry to see collective action actually work. And I was applying for a community organizing job there with a group called CLOUT, Citizens of Louisville Organized and United Together. And they had had a police shooting of an unarmed African-American male. I know that's incredibly surprising. In 1998. And they wanted to see community-oriented policing. They had asked the chief of police to come to the sanctuary of a Catholic church in the inner city, and Clout had packed the hall with 1,200 people awaiting the chief. And they had rehearsed how they were going to challenge the police chief to move from surveillance policing to community-oriented policing. And I wanted a job at Clout, so I went to ingratiate myself there, and I showed up early. They needed help with the registration table, and I watched as the lieutenant of the Louisville Police Department walked up the stairs, came inside the building, and a deacon from one of the Black Baptist churches said, "Hey, where's the chief?" And the lieutenant said, "Yeah, he had something come up. He sent me in his stead." Right? And I watched standing there at the registration desk looking over, going, this will be interesting to see how this goes down. And the lieutenant started, it was a female, she started marching her way down the aisleway, and packed audience. On the stage was a placket of paper next to a microphone that said, "Chief Sherrard." And she got about halfway down the aisle, and she turned to the deacon and she goes, "All these people are here to meet with the chief?" And the deacon said, "Yeah, we've got some issues we want to talk to him about." And she said, "Don't you think the chief ought to be here?" And he said, "Absolutely." And so she goes, "Can I get a phone?" She says, "Sure." This was before cell phones. So she ran, she called the chief of police. 15 minutes later, I saw a chief coming from some fireman's banquet, pulling up his tie, running up the stairs. And for the first time, I understood the power of organized people. And I had already run like 6 campaigns, feeling powerless one after another with the rabbi's words whispering in my ear every single moment, until I saw this action and I was hooked. And so I've spent the rest of my life essentially bringing people together to break our American individualism and identify ourselves for collective action around common causes so that we can balance the powers that be, where organized people, organized money, and our elected officials can be held accountable by all fronts, but I'll be sure that we're in the fight. Now, when I say fight, I mean fight, because once you start really organizing large numbers of people into collective action, you meet resistance. It is not fun and games. And that's why the letter from a Birmingham jail is so instructive. Here is Martin Luther King in Birmingham. He has organized the largest march in the streets of Birmingham collectively with all of the churches. It's not the first in a series of actions he's taken. It's a known strategy. And so Bull Connor pulls a unique response. He arrests everybody. Right? He opens public schools because the jail cells don't have enough cells for all those that Martin Luther King organized. So he's opening up public buildings in order to incarcerate all of the protesters, thinking, I've got this man beat. Martin Luther King, with nothing left to do, calls on the children of Birmingham to march in the streets, and they unleash dogs, and they use fire hoses to spray them down. And you know what happens? Here he is, right? Just think about this, incarcerated, having just put children on the front line, and he's sitting down in a jail to pen a letter to respond to the criticism that he's getting. Does he respond to the local editorial board? Does he respond to the mayor? Does he respond to Bull Connor? No. Who does he respond to? Dear fellow clergymen. The letter from a Birmingham jail was a letter written to other pastors who told him what he was doing was wrong. Right? Here's a man in jail with all of the pressures under him. And who does he see that he has to sit down and respond to? 8 white clergymen. So, I say that to say, again, you can't think yourself to justice. It requires good people to organize, and you will receive criticism, even from your supposed allies. Those would be the lessons that I would impart as words of wisdom. And again, I'm sorry, it's not going to help you throughout the day when you invariably get cut off on the highway and want to figure out how to be a better person and forgive those who are cutting you off. This is a matter of collective action. These are the words of wisdom. If you, as a congregation, are trying to figure out how to, these values we just sung about, this children's story we just heard, the existential crisis of climate change, the impending large numbers of African Americans that are in cages across our country, if those are things that matter to you, I want to tell you there's 3 things you got to know. You can't think yourself to justice. We're going to have to organize, and we're going to face criticism. It is one of the most countercultural things we can do to take collective action. And I realize Unitarians aren't exactly go with the flow American people, right? So I want you to know, I hope it is a charge to you in this congregation that when you're reading the paper and seeing decisions in the public arena that you don't agree with, that you think about joining together with others and doing maybe not the culturally American thing to do, but the historical American thing to do, which is to organize. Thank you.
Our closing hymn is number 121, We'll Build a Land. Will you please rise in body or in spirit?
I just want to leave you with one last thought. There were 31 pastors of Lincoln, Nebraska, that met here this week to form an organization that will serve as a vehicle for people to organize and to do justice. There is no other institution left in the communities where people come and look at their faith and their values and what they believe and question the world, except for the local synagogue, mosque, and church. And so these are the building blocks where good people can organize. However, even in American faith communities, individualism is reigning. Consumer culture, what it is that we own over who we are, is the strongest message we're heard all day long. And so I ask you, as the Unitarian Church in this city, to be a voice of collective action inside this new organization. Don't be a bystander. Be a congregation that will take the lead. So I leave you with this challenge. We are, as Pastor Oscar said, at the nascent stages of this, and it's at the nascent stages of anything where leadership is most required. And I will be looking to this church, and I'm sure others as well, to lead the charge and to bring people together. So please, in the coming months, as this organization forms, be looking for opportunities to engage, and don't be shy, because good people need to organize if justice is to rain down in the city of Lincoln. Thank you.
We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of commitment. These we carry with us until we are together again. Go in peace and amen.